In this video, it's going to be a little bit long because I want to specifically talk about methods of conducting physical training in order to complement certain tasks that you're going to have to perform with a pistol or rifle. So, just to get into this, I talked earlier in a video about developing strength, endurance, or power for certain activities and coordination, and this is exactly what I'm talking about here. It's going to be a combination of coordination of certain physical skills, but also developing that strength specifically. And I'll describe how it's actually working on your body, and based on the certain theories that are out there for why certain workouts are able to do what they do. So first things first is we're going to spend some time gripping a pistol, right? The first thing that you're going to want to do when you're learning to grip a pistol is learn what right is, as far as like maximizing your control just by the technique that you are using. Now, I have talked about this so many times that you cannot technique your way to success when you're actually trying to develop better and better skills. You will plateau when you rely solely on technique. So, with that said, you want good technique right off the bat, and then coupling this with good strength endurance applied in a specific manner with this proper grip, you are going to have a better and better chance of improving your skills and your grip overall with specific workouts catered towards specific muscle groups that are involved in control and realignment. So, with that said, when in grip, work on that technique until you cannot get it wrong, that it is just autonomic to go to that correct grip. And one of the best ways that they found today is pointing towards the threat with your thumb and using that, basically pointing the gun in the general direction with your thumb, using your thumb as the alignment for natural pointing or instinctive pointing. So pointing is not actually a natural thing, and that's actually proven by finding a spot that you want to point at, pointing at it a couple times with your thumb and trying to cover that up with your thumb, and then closing your eyes and actually trying to snap to it with your thumb at the same time. That's going to prove that you are not a natural pointer, that it actually does require hand-eye coordination and specific tracking skills visually. We require mostly visual skills for things. So this is where grip actually comes important, because in order to maintain a proper grip and be able to aim in, at least in the general direction before getting to a sighting ability, you do actually have to develop certain muscles that are going to help that grip stay in alignment and in control. So the fingers that we find that not only throw shots off, but also are very much responsible for controlling the gun right away it's a simple matter of leverage. It is the pinky and the ring finger. And this is kind of further evidenced by when in Japanese culture, they would actually cut off the pinky of certain people if they had a dishonor or something of that nature. They would actually cut them off because this was their power finger for getting a good amount of leverage with their sword. So it makes them less worthy of being lethal swordsmen, I guess you could say. So anyways, I'm not really familiar with that kind of punishment all that much, but it is a good historic example and even a modern example with the Yakuza. But anyways, when it comes to grip, developing that pinky strength can actually be done by coupling it with your general grip technique. And what this is going to do is twofold. Number one is going to unlock, generally speaking, in layman's terms, it's going to unlock your strength ability, your ability to unleash a lot of strength without straining yourself. So what this is going to be is you're going to use an overcoming isometric with your grip, and you're going to do it in a couple of ways. Number one, you're going to focus on the pinky and try to crush the grip with your pinky and ring finger while you are aiming in, because you can hold it like this and try to do it, but it's going to require different muscles than if you are actually aiming in, and it's going to require different pressure variance for leveraging that. So different muscles at different positions, right? So you can practice this low, practice it high, but try to stay aimed in while you're doing this. And secondly, while you are performing that individual crush with the pinky and ring finger on the grip, try crushing it by clapping together. Well, not clapping, but squeezing sideways as well. And this will prevent you from doing the little turtle lockout. You don't want to do a turtle lockout. Number one, that can be bad for your joints. But also relaxing the shoulders and not thrusting them forward, keeping them in position and just bringing it up to your eye, and then not going to full lockout. As you see here, they are bent, and they're a little bit more than 45 degrees out, but they're not incredibly locked. That's because I'm actually putting crushing pressure on it, and the most crush you're actually going to have is when you're not all the way out here. So it can be helpful to do that if you're trying to develop your pectoral muscles during different ranges of motion throughout your presentation. But specifically talking about the isometric function of holding your gun on target and being ready to run through that sequence, that firing sequence, just working on your lockout position is good enough. Not locked out, but your apex of your draw or your presentation. Just work on that here and holding it in an isometric hold. Now what you want to look for here is actually the gun actually shaking, because an overcoming isometric is going to demand maximum muscular input, and that shaking is just muscles twitching, because they twitch, they don't actually hold tension. It's actually a constant twitch. So the more shaking, probably the better. That means you're actually putting more in and you're recruiting more of those power muscles, if you will. So that's a good thing. Now this is just a basic on grip. There's different ways to do it, but I just want to cover it very quickly. So anyways, trigger. Trigger is going to be a lot more simple to explain. The only thing you really need to do is couple it with your grip and pull the trigger as fast as you can while trying to prevent your sight from moving. Do not focus on your sight. Work on your peripheral sensitivity by focusing on something like a light switch or getting a thumbtack and putting it more than 10 feet away or 7 yards away, and trying to stay very centered on that, but pulling the trigger as fast as you can without moving the gun. So this works really good for double actions, developing that trigger movement and being able to do it fast, because there's a theory out there that you cannot pull the trigger fast without moving the gun while gripping hard. You have to loosen up this hand. That is a theory that you can develop that. That's actually, we'll actually call that a myth. So the idea behind that is very lazy in nature, and it's lazy science because that's not how the hand works. You can actually adapt to have this moving independently without sympathetic movement in these other ones, which throws off your shot. Snatching the trigger, there's no such thing. You actually are failing to train to the point of independent movement without sympathetic movement in the grip. So that's proven every time you actually have a competitor that knows the double action. That means they spent a lot of time and they actually have independent movement. And once you train on this, not only have you developed muscle in the trigger finger in order to pull the trigger faster and be more accurate at speed, but also you're going to make it's going to make every other trigger system feel like nothing. So I've always been an advocate of working on the double action. So if you do not have that double action, just to be very quick, what you can do is what I call the trigger drill. This is actually taken from Rob Leatham when he actually was putting out different dry fire drills that you could do to actually be accurate. And he takes like a par timer or a shot timer, and on the beep, he goes from straightening off the trigger, aimed in, to pulling the trigger as fast as he can without moving the gun. Some people would actually want to have reassurance that they're actually doing it right, or minimizing movement by putting like a dime on the end of their front sight or whatever. Another way to do this is just get a laser sight, like from G-Sight. So anyways, that's how I would develop trigger. And because the trigger, the most important thing is independent movement, but being able to do it fast and on demand. And that requires holding that grip. And see how we're stacking here? We're working on that grip first and then the trigger pull. So the next thing is sighting. Now, sighting is going to be a little bit different because yes, we're aiming at something and trying to hold it, but most of the time you're going to want to be moving while you are shooting. So what sighting is going to be, there's a specific drill that I actually like that is very beneficial to the eyes, the coordination, the proprioception and such, and that is target tracking. So you will move at varying speeds, whether it's just a walk or a creep. You could do the crab walk, or you can actually dash and try to do this one-handed if you're at a certain level where the challenge is not that much. You want to stay slightly challenged but develop a flow in your training. So anyways, that's as simple as it is. I call it target tracking, where you have a small target, like a light switch. You aim for the switch itself. So if you don't have that, get a thumbtack or something like that, or a little piece of tape, like take Scotch tape, you know, that really thin stuff, and paint it like red or orange or something of that nature, or something bright and contrasted, so you can actually track it a lot easier. Because we'll typically be working with stuff that's big, and then you can move on to like silhouette targets and aiming at a specific spot. And again, a laser is going to be very beneficial once you get at a higher level and you don't see any peripheral movement from your sights, and you want to rely on peripherals to track your sight movement, not staring at it. That is a bad habit, because you want to see what your threat is doing and see if it's still a threat, rather than seeing if your front sight is actually still clear. The front sight's not going to change, your threat will, based on what you do. So their actions are going to dictate yours, but once you've taken action, you need to see if that action's actually changing, you know, the situation. So focus on the threat, and focus on actually practicing skills that will stop the threat. So with all that said, I appreciate you guys watching. Hopefully you will do these drills, because training is awesome. Training makes you awesome. So don't just rely on good looks. Worry about good skill, because that's what's going to save your life and keep you around to have those good looks, right? So anyways, you guys have a good one.